Oh.
Good to see everyone. So can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Winchester Town Forum, which is taking place tonight in the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. My name is Councillor Kathleen Becker, chairperson of the meeting. Can I advise that the meeting is being audio recorded and live streamed from the council's website. In addition, a video recording will be uploaded to the council's YouTube channel after the meeting. For any officers joining virtually, please can I remind you to turn off your cameras and your microphones when not speaking. And members, can I ask you to please speak clearly and to use your microphone when speaking. Finally, for everyone in the room, please make sure that your mobiles are switched to silent or switched off entirely. Thanks. I don't think we have any fire alarms, do we? This evening, so if you hear the fire alarm going off, the exits are marked. The first item on the agenda are apologies, and it doesn't look from my scanning of the room that we have any apologies.
No, we don't, Chair. No, thank you.
Next, disclosures of interests. Do we have any disclosures this evening? Councillor Todd.
I need to declare an interest as county councillor.
Don't have any chair announcements this evening, so move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which are found on pages 5 to 12 of the pack. Can they be agreed as a true and correct record? Agreed. See lots of members of the public here tonight, so thank you so much for coming. I think speaking we have Mr. Tate first, and then Mr. Woodson. Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to address the Town Forum. As someone who spends a lot of my time in central Winchester, I just wanted to point out a few issues which I think would deserve urgent attention. Some of you may be aware that for many years, Fiona Mather and myself campaigned very hard for the implementation of a commercial refuse policy, as previously many businesses simply left their large refuse bins out permanently on the pavement. The new regime forced them to use the compounds the councils provided or hold their rubbish inside the premises. Over the last couple of years, however, things have started to slip. Ham's Passage, which was the start of the whole debacle, is going back to its awful state. It's terrible there, and they're not abiding by the rules. The square is also starting to fall back into its bad habits. I counted 10 bins there as I walked past here. It's a sad fact that even Coitbury House, the council's housing scheme, has got piles of rubbish out there. I did flag that up with Councillor Levy, but no one's thought about where the rubbish goes. So again, terrible state. Can we go back to clean and clear streets? The iconic Buttercross, which is an important, very important feature in Winchester, is really grubby. There's grass growing out of it, which must be damaging the fabric of that structure. The pigeons roost all around it, so it's invariably covered in pigeon guano, if that's what it is. Children play on that structure, and yes, it is washed down a couple of times a week, but I'm not a parent, but I wouldn't want a child of mine to play on it. It's awful. I've raised this with officers on a number of occasions. People are feeding the pigeons. They often put bird feed or breadcrumbs on the Buttercross outside NatWest Bank. I've just walked past bread in the cupboard. They've got it outside King's Walk. That's littering. People should be stopped from doing that. It makes going into St Lawrence's Church awful. Ken Livingstone got rid of pigeons from Trafalgar Square, so it can be done. If there's a will to do it, it can be done. Some of you may have followed some of my comments in the Chronicle about repairs to the High Street and its attention to detail, which is really disappointing. I'm a pedestrian. I walk all the way around the city many times over the course of a week. Yes, the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, if anyone adhered to them, they would be great. No one does. I'm often in St George's Street. I was there eating last night at Tom's Deli. It's a racetrack, and Tom was mentioning there was a crash there, not reported maybe to the police, but please either enforce a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit or just say to people it's Monaco 12 months of the year. So those, I think they're really important points. It's not my usual affordable housing issue, but I do hope you can take note of them and have some action. A lot of it just shouldn't happen, and the powers are in place. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the committee, and I sincerely hope that some of those easy hits will be taken on board by yourselves and officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Todd, do you want to respond on the bin points?
Yes, I share Mr Tate's concern about the re-emergence of bins, and I have been speaking to city officers and county officers, and indeed retired city officers, in order to get, firstly, speak to the people who were involved in implementing the programme in the first place, most of whom no longer work for the council due to retirement or other reasons, and I've been contacting them to find out exactly what they did and how it worked. The bin store is still in place. The ability for businesses to license bins to be put in that bin store is still in place. And the powers that the county has to deal with highways and obstruction is still in place. And my intention is to work with BID, city officers and county officers to effectively reboot the programme and ensure that the problems you highlight are dealt with. In the meantime, if you are looking to speed things along on your own account, I had a very useful conversation today with a county officer who highlighted that if you report it online using the county system as a highway obstruction, they will write to the people who have placed that obstruction with a letter highlighting the legal situation that the person is in. As said, it is absolutely my intention to put in place a more systematic approach that solves the problem. But in the meantime, if that is something you feel like doing, it is one of the ways you'll be able to move things forward. In terms of the high street surface, I shared the concern about, for example, the repairs outside Tesco. I spoke to the county officer responsible for dealing with utility companies. This was an emergency piece of work that needed to be done by a utility company, so they were not where the stonework had been laid in such a way as it was not possible to remove it without damage. So they had to put an emergency repair down. They have been required and are in the process of commissioning a proper repair to bring the high street back to an adequate standard. There is a very helpful, very good officer in Hampshire called Ian Ackerman, who is very helpful with these issues and takes the need to get the high street back to a high standard as seriously as any of the rest of us. So if there are any other, please don't hesitate to get in touch with your local county councillors if you want help on that kind of thing.
Thank you. And we were going to touch on this in the report back from the Heritage Group later this evening, but we have been discussing the Buttercross. So Councillor Tippett Cooper, who chairs that committee, could provide an update on plans for the Buttercross.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Becker. And Mr Tate sort of shared many of your concerns about maintaining cleanliness of high streets as well. On the Buttercross, I mean, it is something that the council looked at. It's something which is part of a number of detailed conservation structural surveys that have been undertaken on key heritage sites. These surveys are something that are going to inform the asset management plan the council has, and essentially for each site they're working on a basis of priority based on the condition of heritage sites, but the Buttercross is certainly one of them. It's just a matter of working out where the funding will be for it, but it's something that is a real concern for the council, and we want to make sure that it's properly maintained and looked after as one of Winchester's key heritage assets. And in terms of litter, there's some really good community litter groups, which I know have been working really hard to keep Winchester clean. Winchester litter pickers, for example, do absolutely sterling work. I would commend them. And equally the Hyde litter pickers, who keep the Hyde area very clean on a regular basis, do sterling work there. It's an ongoing battle. It's something everyone's really concerned about, and something which I think the council is too. It's provided Ivy Burley does some really great work on the litter partnership on that front. So it's a community and council effort to keep the streets clean. I think we all share that goal.
Thank you. And just to add that the Buttercross is a scheduled ancient monument, so unfortunately it's not within the council's gift to just go and pigeon-proof it. We do need permission from English Heritage before we can do, or Historic England, it's the official part of it.
I'm aware of that.
And we are starting those discussions with Historic England, but anyone who's dealt with Historic England knows that they're an extremely slow-moving organisation. So those discussions are commencing, but we just have to be realistic that they do take time. But we do share your frustration, and that's why the weekly cleans have been underway to give it some protection in the meantime while we work out how we get rid of the pigeons. Councillor Learning.
Yeah, thank you. Just to come back around to Coitbury, the piles of rubbish were due to a problem with the tenants' commercial rubbish collection. They had trouble getting drivers, apparently, which is a problem across the industry. That is now, I believe, in control. I am visiting them tomorrow to talk to the Low team, and I'll investigate further and see whether we can make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Tate. I think you prompted quite a lot of discussion, so thank you. Mr. Woodson.
Thank you. On the subject of rubbish, does the council have a target for recycled rubbish as a percentage of the total? And also, have they noticed whether, as a result of increased online shopping, and what supermarkets are trying to do to reduce, whether the recycle element has increased? Second question I have relates to an item I noticed on the Winchester Council website, that they aim to have 300 extra places for park and ride vehicles by 2021, this year. I'd like to know what progress has been made on that matter, because of the what has happened over COVID has been postponed or delayed, and where those places are going to be. That's my question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Todd, I think that all falls firmly within you.
So thank you very much indeed for your questions. In terms of overall recycling, the picture is quite complicated across Hampshire, and indeed Hampshire has slightly gone backwards. However, I'm pleased to inform you that Winchester has the fastest increasing recycling rate in Hampshire. We do set goals for how much it increases. Currently it's around 42%, up from 37% when this administration took control. We are as said, we have the fastest increasing recycling rate in Hampshire. We were the third highest for recycling, we're now the second highest. And that's in a context where Hampshire as a whole, unfortunately, has the worst recycling rate of any county. We are also working with colleagues across Hampshire to find ways to recycle even more. The trends that you mentioned in terms of increased cardboard, we also saw a big increase in glass during lockdown, and we've seen a big increase this summer in garden waste, where we've had 3 record months, the highest ever collecting garden waste, and that's despite having introduced a pay-for service. We are working with colleagues in Hampshire, and the paper has just been published for a new collection method that will allow us to recycle from the doorstep pots, tubs and trays, for example, and also ensure that the cardboard that we're collecting is collected in a higher quality way. In addition to the garden waste and doorstep glass collections, one other thing that we've just done is put carton bins out across the district. We did only have them in Worthy Lane. We've now put carton bins into Colden Common, South Wanston, Denmead and Alsford. And so hopefully that, alongside the other new materials we're collecting, like batteries and electrical appliances, will continue to drive our increase in recycling. You asked about the expansion of Park and Ride. The answer is yes, we're in the process of building a Park and Ride car park in Barfield Close on the former Vortex site, and that will have 287 parking spaces. The original plan was that it would have 300, but we removed 13 in order to make the building smaller and move it further away from Durham Road in response to a consultation session to local residents.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your questions?
Is that going to happen this year?
Yes, we are on track to complete construction by the end of this financial year.
Because I mean, sorry, will it need extra vehicles? Extra buses?
The current thinking is that it won't need extra buses, but we are currently working with Hampshire on our future plan for buses, including the Park and Ride, and we'll be watching that. What we're finding is, particularly from Barfield Close, and we expect also from Vortex, a significant proportion of people using that Park and Ride do walk into town. And so right now, although Park and Ride usage is increasing extremely quickly at the moment, and for the first time last week, since COVID, several of our Park and Rides were absolutely rammed full, which has not happened for quite some time. We're still not back where we were, despite the rapid growth at the moment. So we think that we don't need extra Park and Ride buses at this stage as part of the Vortex plan.
Thank you. So thank you both for coming along this evening. It's always lovely to have people in the room. The next item on the agenda is the Vision for Winchester update. Mrs. Robbins, I think you're going to begin with, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Yes, I'll do a short introduction to the paper for you. And this report proposes an approach to taking forward the implementation of the Vision for Winchester. It's important that the vision becomes reality and we adopt the values and principles it sets out. We do not lose momentum from all the work that was done to create it. This focuses on how we achieve vision outcomes as much as the what. Some work on taking this forward has already started. For example, in the concept of the 15-minute city being included in the local plan consultation on strategic issues and priorities. And there are other examples, areas of work and funding sources that collectively could start to form the basis of an implementation framework. And I've given some of those in the plan. However, these are only a few examples. It will be necessary to engage with all our services to make officers aware of the vision, its recommended approach, and how we work with our town communities. We need to capture from them existing and planned activities that have the potential to affect change in the city. It will also be an opportunity to identify some early work to support the principle of 100 small wins, to demonstrate and build confidence that the vision can deliver change in a different way. So it is recommended that an internal briefing with some pre-work and follow-up work is arranged for officers. And this is really to embed the vision in their thinking and the way that they work across the city. The original consultants have provided us a proposal for this, and we are recommending that we use them because of their expert knowledge and in the process of developing the vision, its recommendations and the new approach for ways of working. There is an estimated cost of 9,000, and the report says that requests that this be funded from the town account. From that workshop and session with the officers, it will be possible to create an implementation framework and programme that sets out a roadmap for how and when outcomes will be achieved. But it is important to recognise this is a 10-year vision, and as I said before, we would want to programme activity that shows some early wins, but also start to develop some of those longer-term projects and ways of working. And for that implementation plan, it's proposed that this framework comes back and be considered by town forum members in a session to be arranged to agree the next steps, including resources allocation if necessary. I provided an indicative programme for this, and that's included in the report, but the chief aim would be to report back to the town forum at its January meeting for the outcome of that officer session and the implementation framework. So that's a very brief introduction to the paper, but hopefully it sets out a clear approach that we want to adopt to ensure that the vision is taken forward. Thank you, Chair. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions on this paper? Councillor Scott.
Right, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at the risk element on page 18, and one particular category, and it says reputation. I think sometimes we get sort of stuck as a council when we sort of come up with these bright visions and we don't ever see any fruits from it. And there's a few of us been long enough on the council now to know this is probably our third Winchester division that we've set under, or some members may be the fourth Winchester division that we've set under. So reputation for me is key under the risk. Do we know, when you sort of mentioned 100 small wins, have we as the council already got a few in mind what the small wins would be? Who will be the community stakeholders? Because quite often we get business people coming into these meetings, but we don't always go out to the communities and the estates around Winchester to get a really good view from a younger person's view to an older person's view and working age individual as well. So how do we go about that? And the last sort of question would be, how does this vision fit within the central Winchester stuff that's going on? The members this week had a update briefing on the central Winchester. Where does that fit into this process as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. With regard to the quick wins, we are aware of some of the projects and work that is already it could be adapted to involve greater community participation and involvement, and I cited some of those, for example, with the play spaces and play areas and work that we're doing there, and how can we involve more of the community voice in their design. There's the grants programme. Can we encourage greater community participation and take up of those? But I think that's why the officer session is so critical, because it's important to capture from those officers what work they are doing and how can we support them in delivering them differently, which is around involving and being out in the community much more and involving them in the early stages of the design of those projects. And that leads on to then the stakeholder and the community engagement. I think there was obviously a group of willing people that came together to work on the vision. We really want to re-engage and make sure that we keep them involved in the processes, but it is about the how we work, this vision, I feel, and so this is about embedding that community activity in the projects and work that we do, and so that would involve much greater outreach and involvement working with local communities. With regard to the Central Winchester project, I think from my perspective, it leads on to that, making sure the communities are engaged in these processes. I haven't got any sort of specific examples I can give at the moment on that, but hopefully the workshop with the officers will draw that out. Hopefully that answers your questions, Councillor.
Any further questions? Sorry. Councillor Cress, didn't see you.
Right, I'm never sure I've got a question or to debate. Can we go to debate?
If there are no further questions, then yes, we can move on to debate.
Go for the question.
probably similar to Councillor Scott actually in terms of I think there is a big risk of this being a document that sits on the shelf. So I fully support additional and further work to bring it to life. I agree with you in terms of it's as much about how as what. So I think that's possibly how it's very different to previous visions. And I think it's a very intelligent, very sophisticated piece of work that reflects culture change within an organisation. And I don't know if there are too many precedents for the type of thinking and the type of work that the vision represents. So I do fully support additional work that the consultants need to do to embed that culture within the council and to work with officers. And I don't think it's something the officers, we could just ask officers to pick up and run with. So it does need work and support and investment to bring it to life, to transform the way that council officers work, the way that we all work, the way that we engage with the public, and the way that residents are empowered to deliver the changes that they want to see, which is very much what we captured from that vision work, is that people want to do things, they want to create the changes that they see, they want to be litter pickers, they want to clean up the high street, they want to create Winchester, they don't just want to say, council, you do it for us, we want to do it. So there's work to change the way we work as a council.
Sorry, Councillor Cresp, is there a question?
The question is I think this is half debate, not the question. Thanks. I think the question is, can we have an inventory of 100 great wins? It'd be nice to know when we've got 100 wins. I'd like to know when we do. And if there was a way that we could submit a win, I think that would be quite nice. And I'd like to see a resource available for further support in the way that parishes have parish officers. We don't have a town form officer that could champion the work and support residents with how they want to go and enable the changes. So a bit of debate, a bit of question there. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your consideration.
Mrs. Roberts. Thank you, Councillor. I think the idea of an inventory of 100 wins and logging when we get there and progress against it is a very good idea, and we'll take that back as part of the work to go forward an implementation plan, and also a mechanism for allowing the community to input their wins, because it is about their activity and their effort as much as ours, so absolutely take that on board. I think with regard to the way that we can support officers in this is actually one of the reasons why it's transferred from Simon Finch's area of work, which is planning and policy, which set out the vision work, and actually is now moving to my areas of responsibility, which is economy and community, which is very much about working with our different business sectors. So we're already looking at some of the culture recommendations that came out of the vision. We have the communities team, we're working with that, we've got a sustainability team. So I think that's one of the rationales for moving it into my areas of responsibility, because it lends much more to that outward engagement and working with our communities. So in a way, we will be the champions for this with other officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions before we formally move into debate? No. So debate, any debate? Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Winchester is a complex city. We know that for some time now, when we've tried to move many of our major projects forward. In many respects, sometimes Winchester folks out there probably look at us councillors and thinking, what on earth do you do down here? And how do you make your decisions? And how do you move things forward? And here we are again around a vision for Winchester. And it's trying to present that in an ample way to the people we represent back on our wards to say, yes, we've got another vision and we're going to come up with some ideas. Community development is a complex animal. It's a complex creature, I know that, because there used to be a community development worker in the 90s. And it's not easy to bring forward. You have to have good resources, and I don't think we've got oodles of resources at some of the time in council at our pleasure. We only know that when we ask a housing officer to do something, or a labour services officer to do something, and they all look back in and go, oh, we haven't got anyone more, or we're lacking. So resources is key if we actually move the vision forward. Forums and groups and engagement is key in communities, but if you come back over to Stanwell some of the time, we haven't got a resident group, community group, or no forum in existence. We've had that over the years, but they don't exist. So we do need a form of the City Council community officers to engage on that level before we can move the vision forward back into the good old estates such as Stanwell. Stanwell also had a master plan which is nearly 10 years out of date now. So that would be a good starting point to refresh the master plan in Stanwell, and Winnell was the year after, and to refresh the Winnell master plan. And at the same time, we remember having the Highcliffe Forum coming to the town forum, and it was a really exciting piece of work that Highcliffe did, and it'd be good to have that engagement around the town forum as well, to hear from or have an update from the Highcliffe Forum folks to see what their perspective of Winchester is all about, especially now they've got the leisure centre on their doorstep. Profiling areas, profiling communities, surveying to make sure we're on the track is all key to the community process. And it's not as if Councillor Scott's not for this, because community comes out of my veins, but I think we have to have some form of tangibleness to show the residents of Winchester. Otherwise, we'll be having the headlines, here they go again. Thank you.
I'm not sure who was first. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I'd like to build on what Councillor Scott has just said, because I was picking up one of the comments around, community groups not taking advantage of SIL funding, and I think since we've had that available, it has been a real challenge for us to empower and help our community groups to take advantage of some of the resources that are there. And that I think we do recognise there's a gap in the provision we provide for the town in terms of that assistance and guidance of how to get something done. And we'll be hearing in the next item from the Wick Community Centre about the project that they've been working on for a long time. And I think we've experienced that lack. And I'm not pointing a finger at officers. I think we have a responsibility as a town forum to think about how we resource that to activate and empower our communities to do more for themselves. And if that comes out of this project, I think it'll be a real win. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levy is next.
Thank you. I do remember the previous Winchester vision document, and it was very different from this one. It was very strategic, high level, and most of the recommendations in there, I think, were achieved by accident rather than by design, because there wasn't resources thrown at it. I think we're in a much better position. I think the vision work has been excellent, and what's come out of it, that emphasis on delivering the small stuff for our communities, not trying to do everything at once and not trying to decide on everything at once, is a much better way forward. The next paper we'll be discussing will be the finance paper, and I think it's important that we recognise that if we want to deliver stuff, we do need to consider whether we need to put more money behind this work. We'll need some clear deliverables that we want to see, but I think we will have to think about that budget and consider what we do with it going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Councillor Becker. Yes, following on from what everybody else has said, I'm really pleased to see this paper before us tonight. I'm very happy to support it. Like Councillor Lerney and Councillor Scott, I've been on the council and sat under various other visions, and I think the truth is they never really had an action plan, but it looks like we are going to get an action plan with this one, which I think is brilliant. I really like Councillor Crask's idea of an inventory of the small wins, because I think it's really important to demonstrate to our residents things that they can see that we've done to improve their community and therefore their lives. So I think that's really important. Of course, it also, carrying on the vision is also going to require a lot of engagement, and engagement's always difficult. It's always difficult to reach those sections of the community, whether it's in Stanmore or Winnell on our estates, or even in our own, in St Paul's, for instance. Yes, there are lots of little residence groups, but they tend to be very, very sort of focused on their small area, and obviously we need to do a lot of engagement to find out the wider community's views, I would say. So really happy to support this, and I think it's a great step forward. Thank you.
Thank you all. Any further debate? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I like most about the vision is the fact it was produced and driven from the ground up. The consultants did a great job, as other people have said, in engaging the community in that early work to come forward with this whole concept of 100 small wins. And one of the things that resonated with me in the papers that we were given was that one of the wins they wanted was that enablement piece. They said it would be a win if they felt they could go to the council, they could get the support, and they could get the things done that they'd like to do. And some of the barriers to getting stuff done was that sort of inability to sort of feel how to permeate the city council, who to talk to, who to go to. I noticed in the report there's a comment about giving officers the time and the space to do the engagement. And I think this piece of work, which I do support, if it can find a way to give officers the time and the space to do the community engagement at the earliest stage, to be there to listen, to allow the projects to come out of the community, to do the enabling work, then I think this money will be well spent. The only thing I would caution, like Councillor Lerney, is the town account only has so much money, so we must spend it wisely. So having something which allows us to see the outcome of this work, to see the benefit of this work, just both for Town Forum, but also for our residents, I think it's going to be really vital. But I support this as a good way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Tippy Cooper.
I think just to speak as a councillor who's brand new, freshly minted on the Town Forum, and it's sort of in juxtaposition to Councillor Scott, I suspect. I didn't say that. Is that this vision is exactly the sort of vision that inspired me to get involved with the council, to be honest, because it is the sort of thing where if we're going around this table, you could ask every councillor, can you think of just a handful of small wins that you've done in the last few weeks or months, and they would be able to identify some. And it's just a matter of being able to get that out there in an inventory, as Councillor Pratt very sensibly says. But then that also, I think, it empowers people and gives people confidence to see, well, actually, these things are happening and small wins can be achieved in my community if I tap into my councillor, tap into the council to do it. So I think it's really good, and I really support this paper as well.
Thank you very much. If there's no further debate, no, we will move to the recommendations. So we are asked to endorse the next steps proposed to implement the recommendations of the vision, comprising establishing an internal briefing led by the vision consultants, develop an implementation framework and program that sets out a roadmap for how and when recommended outcomes can be achieved, that a member session is arranged with officers to review the implementation framework and a program to agree next steps, including resources, And of course, the money comes last. Approve a supplementary revenue budget estimate of up to £9,000 from the town reserve to cover the costs. Are we agreed to those recommendations? Fantastic. I think you all know this is something that I am extremely passionate about, and as others have said, the vision work that we have done has been completely driven by the community, and one of the specific things we sought to do was to reach out to those people in the community that we don't hear from all the time. So throughout the implementation process, that's something that we are going to have to continue to make sure that we do, and it's a personal issue for me. I want to be able to reach out and engage those groups as well. Of course, we are going to have to look at the council resources that we do have in the town forum, resources that we have to provide additional resource for the town, perhaps for the public to be able to contact the council and to know that they have the support and that there's a person that they can reach out to and say, yeah, I know if I need help, I can talk to them and they will be able to point me in the right direction. I also completely agree with what Councillor Tiffet Cooper has said. Once we get these projects off the ground and people know that they're happening, I think there's a snowball that takes place, and there is a confidence that's built in the community that people can say, oh, that group has got money, oh, that group's been able to achieve that. If they can do it, we can do it. And so it really does build that community spirit. So I'm really, really happy that we are going to be continuing with this implementation work. So thank you all. The next item on the agenda is the town, of course, the town account financial planning. Mr. Kennedy, are you, it says that you're in the room, but I think you might be online.
No, he's not. I'll just go and see if he's available outside, because we didn't have a lot of space in here today, Chair, so I'm just going to have to sanitise the desk as well. Just bear with me.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Robbins, for the paper as well. I should have said. Oh, okay, that's great.
I'm sorry, Chair, but Darren's not in the lobby area yet. I'm not sure about him.
Does someone have his number to be able to? Otherwise, if Ms. Croker is there or Mrs. Lord, we can move on to the next item and swap them around.
Yes, they are. They are. They're downstairs. So I'll just go and get those.
Do you like to pull down? Yeah.
It's all right, we're not asking you to present the accounts. So for anyone listening online, we're going to have the presentation on the North Falls Park Plan first, and then we'll move to the town account financial planning paper.
Sorry, you are, sorry. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Okay, the feedback I'm going to give tonight is based on the public consultation that ran from the 10th to the 11th of June this year. 10th of May to the 11th of June, yeah, that's right. This presentation covers the analysis of the results. It doesn't interpret them or make representations or recommendations for how this feedback will be used to inform the final version of the park plan. The consultation was conducted primarily online, although facilities were made for other ways of providing feedback where appropriate. An online question and answer session was also held with the consultant team midway through the consultation period. The aim of the consultation was to seek feedback on the draft plans developed by the consultants based on feedback from the initial 2-day consultation event in 2018 and the walking tours which we held with stakeholders last year. The previous consultation provided invaluable data about who uses the park, how often, where they come from and the activities they do, as well as on areas of improvement, and all this information formed the basis for the draft park plan. The draft plan consisted of a series of documents including a vision statement, the outdoors room concept, a presentation of a suite of 19 different ideas for the site, some sketch impressions of some of the key areas and a picture board showing precedent images from other locations. All these documents are still available on our website should anybody wish to refer to them. We had a total of 580 responses to the online survey. This slide highlights some of the key findings. So 80% of respondents lived in the Winchester town area based on the postcode information that they provided. 74% of people surveyed agreed with the vision statement as it was proposed. 63% of people surveyed supported the outdoor rooms approach detailed in the plan. We asked people to look at the 19 different ideas that were proposed and prioritise which they thought were the most important. In order of priority, the top 3 choices were plaza, multifunctional space with toilets, quieter areas for wildlife planting and the new perimeter track. However, all proposals in the plan received positive support, with the exception of the tower, which 53% of people did not. This chart shows the location of survey respondents based on the postcode information broken down into the town area, parish areas of Winchester, neighbouring authorities such as Test Valley and Eastleigh, and those from further away. The vision statement for North Walls.
Do you just say, so you can't really read the right one, like just say what comes on.
So the green bit's the town area, the orange bit's the parish, the neighbouring authorities. Right, thank you. The vision statement from North Walls developed by the consultants was supported by 74% of respondents. For those who were either unsure or did not agree with it, the majority wanted to see more emphasis on the natural elements of the site, and the term landmarks for some was not seen appropriate as they felt this suggested large man-made structures. The term outdoor rooms also caused some confusion, with people envisaging barriers between areas. So we need to communicate that spaces will be continued to be used flexibly, and there's no additional cost in adopting this approach, as this was a concern raised by some individuals. We also asked people if they had other suggestions for outdoor rooms, and a Lido and a permanent cafe were the most popular options. There was interest in a Lido in the initial consultation in 2018 as well. However, this was not put forward as part of these proposals, as there's nowhere to provide this on the recreation ground without the loss of significant green space or sports fixtures. However, water play did form part of the proposals for the plaza area. All 19 ideas detailed in the park plan are shown on this chart in order of priority, as selected by respondents to the survey. I've already mentioned the top 3, which were the plaza, the quieter areas for wildlife planting, and the new perimeter track.
Fourth was the upgraded play space, and 5 was reinstating the historic river access with improvements to the entrances at Nuns Road and Nuns Walk at the other end of the chart, not being seen as a priority for most people. The park plan proposed a series of outdoor rooms, and the consultation was based on each of these areas. So we had the grand entrance, the play and skate area, tower, pictures and picnics, sport and fitness, quiet and wildlife. So the presentation tonight will follow this format. The slide shows the features, all the features that made up the grand entrance there. They were all popular with people responding to the survey. Those who did provide comments wanted to see a natural entrance in keeping with the local area. And lots of positive comments received on the plaza area, particularly in relation to the proposals of some form of catering, toilets and the water play. Play and skate. The most popular proposal in the play and skate area was the upgrade to the play area. Skate park enhancements were also popular. The repainting of the banana bridge was not shown as a popular option here, but in the comments for this section it's because most people didn't actually want it painted yellow, not because they didn't feel it needed maintaining or wanted improvement. So it's important to sort of get the detail of the comments as well as look at the overall headlines. Next slide, you can see the picture of the lovely yellow banana bridge, which a lot of people commented that although historically it was yellow, they didn't like it. The suggestion of pop-up golf was only popular with 38% of respondents, with the main concern being loss of flexible green space or using open space for that particular purpose. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the tower was not popular with 53% of respondents, most giving reasons thinking it was out of character with the park or unnecessary, that they'd rather spend money on other projects or were worried about antisocial behaviour. Of course, those that supported it thought it'd be a great fun, a real feature in the park, and had great ideas about how it could be used. The most popular ideas for pictures and picnics outdoor rooms were the perimeter track and the resurfacing and widening of the main linear park. The perimeter track was also the third most important priority voted for people overall. One of the quotes we provided here is from a member of Parkrun, as they will be able to use the perimeter track as part of their route. But it's intended that this track will provide an accessible route throughout the whole year for all park users. The comments we received about the entrance to Nuns Road and Nuns Walk, and the reason they're showing as lower priority is because people felt that feature at that point wasn't necessary, or the entrance just needed tidying up and improved maintenance rather than an actual landmark. The message about the linear park was that this was a key route through the park, used extensively by a variety of groups, and improvements would benefit a wide user group and reduce conflict between different user groups in the park. 66% of respondents supported the idea of an outdoor fitness area, thought it would be particularly well used as an area for all weather sports and fitness classes. The main theme raised through the comments was whether the current plan showed this in the right location due to its proximity to the cricket pitch and whether it impacted on the view through to the recreation ground from Hyde Abbey Garden. We received lots of useful comments and suggestions about how the area could be used, the type of equipment people would like to see provided, as well as other sports that people would like to be able to participate in. The final outdoor room is the quiet and wildlife area. There are several of these areas shown around the site. All of these suggestions were very popular with respondents to the survey, and wildlife planting, as I said, was the second most popular option overall. Respondents were keen to ensure that any improvements to the park would enhance the biodiversity, improve the access to nature and provide greater focus on the rivers which give the park its name. Adding more areas specifically for wildlife is the most popular important option for people within this section of the plan. As part of the consultation documents, the design team produced 6 images of key areas within the park. Survey respondents were asked to provide comments on images they particularly liked or they didn't like. The perimeter path image and fitness area received positive feedback. The main concern listed by only 7 people is they thought it looked a little bit too formal. The sketch image of the play area was popular with 98 people. Any comments made by more than 5 people I've shown in the chart next to that image. The tower image was not liked by 142 people, but this reflects the view that 53% of people didn't think the tower was a suitable picture for the park rather than being related to that specific picture. The sketch image for the plaza was liked by 123 people. Again, this reflects the view that this was the most popular feature in the park plan. The park entrance people didn't like, and that ties in with the comments about people thinking it should be more simple and natural, maybe some sort of planting or tree type entrance. In addition to the sketch designs, the consultants produced a picture board showing images from other sites of what most of the 19 ideas could look like. Again, people were asked to comment on the images that they particularly liked or disliked. Appreciate that you might not be able to see those images that clearly on the presentation today, but it will be on the website by tomorrow for you to have a look at. In addition to the comments we received of the play area images that are shown on this picture board and in the previous sketch image, people also gave their ideas for the type of equipment they would like to see in the play area. This information will be used as part of the brief for the tender for the play area and will be given to play designers to help them produce a park that meets the needs and aspirations of the users. As you can see, the feedback on the tower focused more on the fact people felt it was not needed than on the imagery here. The images of the park and the wildlife areas were very popular with the survey respondents. The information and comments people have made in each of the images will be used to inform the final version of the park plan, and going forward when we move to the implementation phase, these will provide a starting point for developing the proposals into reality. At the end of the survey, respondents were asked to express any concerns they may have about the proposals. 10% of people stated they didn't have any at all. We've then shown the top 6 concerns that were expressed. Other than things that I've already mentioned in tonight's presentation, 7% of people wanting to ensure that maintenance was a key consideration. This applied to the existing park and areas of it, as well as to any new features that may result as part of the park plan. 6% of respondents were keen to ensure that the council received value for money and that funding was spent on items that provided a tangible benefit. Most of the comments have been incorporated throughout the survey, but the key themes from the last section were based around ensuring that the natural look and feel of the open space was retained, and we also received some positive feedback about our proposals and improvements. The next step in the project, which is currently taking place now, is the production by the consultant team of the final version of the park plan. This will then be discussed with the IPG, and we hope to bring that final park plan back to the next meeting of the town forum in November, and that will also show how the plan has been shaped by the consultation and the feedback that I presented you to tonight. The presentation from tonight will be available on our website from tomorrow, and we'll continue to keep the webpage updated with the time frame, the next steps and everything as soon as that's been agreed. If you've got any questions, I'll have a go at answering.
Thank you. I know you put so much work into this park plan, so thank you, and thank you for that really clear presentation. Because it's just a presentation, I think we'll just have questions rather than debate. So, Councillor Scott.
No, I'm going to really do difficult questions. No. In the breakdown of the pie chart of obviously who put their sort of results in, you got Winchester Town as 80%. Do you know the breakdown of that 80%, where that comes from within the town wards? Is it sort of really sort of the near neighbours as a Hyde community, or does it come across from Highcliffe, Week, Stand, and all that sort of stuff? So that's my first question for you. The interesting bit about the consultation of North Walls, I'm taking that for sort of static buildings that were there, as in the indoor bowls, the tennis courts and the astral pitch, just doesn't come into the equation. They're going to stay in this equation. This is other things to be, once the big buildings coming down, this is what's going to be added to them. Am I correct in saying that? And my final question to you is, as and when the decision is made, is it decided here first at forum, or is it then going to go to cabinet stroke full council? Where does the decision or things go to? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the town area is spread across, so if that becomes anything in the SO22, SO23 postcode, I can break it down further by Winchester Ward if you'd like that information. We do have that information, but I haven't got it with me tonight. But yeah, I can tell you it is spread across the whole town area. It's a facility that meets the needs of the whole town as opposed to the area of Hyde. And yep, the indoor bowls club and the AstroTurf pitch and the tennis courts are all staying as are. Where does it go? Yeah, that might be a question for Councillor Becker, I think, it's fixed with the town forum.
It does sit with the park plan sits with the town forum. Yeah, so it will come. So there is the informal park group that meets, so that Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Radcliffe, Councillor Cooper and I, Councillor Levy attended as a cabinet member. And so a report will come back from that group to the town forum. Any further questions? Councillor Chris.
So this is what I should probably know the answer to. So looking at we're looking for a plan for the park. It wasn't in the material, but I went onto the website, and the park doesn't cover, and the scope doesn't cover the bowling club, and it doesn't cover the. It does?
No, you're correct.
Yeah, that one is, yeah.
I just wanted to pick up on what Councillor Scott made about the buildings. This doesn't cover the building land. The buildings are outside of the scope of this. So the buildings are up for a subsequent plan development proposal, which is not part of this.
Okay, sorry for the benefit of those listening that would say yes, no.
Yes, that's correct. The scope of the other building, the Live Centre sites, falls within the remit of Cabinet, so Councillor Learning may want to update you first.
Thank you. Yes, we will be, as I've told members at the last council meeting, we will be making an announcement on the way forward for the rest of the site this autumn. So it should actually fit in really well with the park plan, and we'll be able to dovetail those together.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank officers for all the immense work that they've done on looking through the consultation responses. And I just wanted to ask Mr. Law and Mrs. Croker whether they were surprised by the level of detail that people have gone into in their responses, and whether, even though it's taken a considerable amount of work to produce this fine presentation that you've done today, and thank you for that, whether you feel it has given you that depth of detail that will help you hone that park plan to actually meet what our residents at homes would like to see. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a wealth of information. It has been a task to try and pull themes out and to get into some form of presentation that we can give to you tonight. But absolutely, we've got a much better understanding of people's feelings about the site, people's aspirations. We have a lot of background information behind this, which we can use to inform our plans moving forward.
And I was just going to say that we are very grateful to anybody that has contributed, and not just with this one, but the previous one as well. And so between the last two consultations, the one we did in 2018, which really set the sort of benchmark, and then this one, it's been hugely valuable. But we're not over yet as we start to deliver and bring some more things forward. So we will continue the engagement and consultation as required to help deliver those. So we are still part of the process, but yes, very much.
Hopefully this can go on the inventory of one win. Any further questions? No, well, thank you both very much. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Ferguson said. I know how much work you and your team have put into looking at all the data that's come out of the park plan and working with the consultants and pulling together this presentation. So thank you very much, and keeping us up to date as well. Thank you. Thank you for coming along tonight.
Try and phrase that.
Do we have Mr Kennedy available?
We've issued the virtual Teams link to them to join virtually.
Apologies, Chair. Darren had difficulties joining the meeting through the link, so we've resent him the link. I've just got a message saying he's logging on now, so.
Lovely. So, well, it's a good time if anyone needs a comfort stop to run out. Mr Kennedy, I'm sorry for the problems you've had logging in. So the paper that we're now discussing is the town account financial planning paper. So are you able to introduce that? Or Councillor Wood, did you want questions on the?
I don't mind. It would be useful, I think, if members have got questions regarding, well, sorry, let's go. If Mr Kennedy is going to say something about the SIL, then it would be better to have his introduction first, I think, and then members can ask Mr North any questions pertaining to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Kennedy.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So if I just run through the summary, a brief summary of the paper. So this is the start of the budget process for 22-23. We've had a meeting of the informal accounts group, and that has fed into this paper, and a number of areas will be explored further as a result of that, in order to prepare some options for the November paper. So welcome views tonight if anyone has any questions or any options that they would like to explore further as part of that budget process. So as I say, the next paper, the budget options, will come to November Town Forum, and then the final recommendations will be made to January, which will obviously then go to Cabinet and Council for final approval as part of the overall budget. So if I just run through the paper briefly, obviously quite a big consideration for the town is community infrastructure levy. As noted in the recommendations, there has been a bid for funding in relation to Week Community Centre. That bid is for up to £23,000, and as shown in the paper, it's essentially for utilities works in order to progress further options for the community centre. These are urgent works, I understand, which are required in order to develop things further. So that bid is here for recommendation. Some further details have been requested from the informal accounts group, just to finalise all of the financials exactly, obviously making sure that any SIL bids are funding one-off expenditure only, and any recurring expenditure would be expected to be funded from the community centre. So that's in here. Also, in terms of the town precept, we haven't had any final indications from government yet, but we're expecting that will again be in line with previous years, and so therefore we expect that we'll be able to increase the overall precept for the district and town by £5, and that gives flexibility for an increase of roughly 3% for the town and district. Obviously, if the districts didn't go for a 3% increase, that would give greater flexibility for the town. So therefore that is an overall consideration which links into the district's decision making over its precept. The town could have additional flexibility if the district decided not to go for a 3% increase within there. Capital expenditure, there are a number of capital budgets and outstanding considerations for the town, which the town is aware of. There are obviously the changing pavilions for North Walls, which has an overall £800,000 budget. There's also King George V pavilions, which is a proposal under development, but the town has already ring-fenced 228,000 of its Section 106 open space funding towards that project, and the play area refurbishments, which is an ongoing rolling programme. There's £830,000 of budget within there from 2021-22 to 25-26, and that's within the projections within Appendix A. At the moment, and before any additional pressures which may come from the budget process, and some which haven't been quantified yet, because we know, as with the capital programme, there are a number of items which are due to come forward, so therefore they're not costed at the moment. But before any of that, the reserve projections, which you can see in Appendix A, show that the town is expecting to remain above its 10% financial strategy level for earmarked reserves. So those are looking healthy, but obviously before any additional pressures within that. And I think that's it in terms of a summary from me, so happy to take questions.
Thank you, and I should say that Mr North from the Wheat Community Centre is here as well, and I understand is willing to answer questions on the SIL application as well. Thank you very much for being here.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. Do we have questions on this paper? Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Chair. I had questions for Mr Kennedy on the assumptions on Appendix A around contract inflation and utilities. We're seeing quite a lot of debate in the public sphere now about inflation. Energy cost bills are going up quite steeply, and obviously there's pressure on third-party costs as well from wages and other factors. Do you think our assumptions are realistic looking ahead to 26-27, given the current circumstances?
It's a very good question. We are reviewing those assumptions at the moment. Obviously, inflation has spiked, CPI inflation has spiked for August, and that's just been released very recently. And so therefore it may well be prudent to increase the assumptions, certainly for 22-23. That won't, obviously that will have an impact. It won't have a huge impact on the town, but it certainly looks like we may need to increase that for 22-23. Further forward from that, we may well keep the 2% expected increase. That's obviously in line with government targets, but we are reviewing that at the moment, and so therefore that will be updated for the November Town Forum meeting, and it may be that we potentially increase that to around the 3% level or slightly higher.
Thank you. Councillor Levy.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Weir asked one of my questions, so it shows it's something that quite a few of us are concerned about at the moment. I actually have a question for Mr North, who's handily here. I was on the panel which looked at the SIL application. I think our concern around that was that it wasn't quite clear whether the entirety of the 23,000 that was being asked for was for capital funding, as there was some mention of ongoing costs. Can you give us some reassurance about that, Mr North?
Yes, certainly I can. So the 23,000 was made up of two figures. It's 18,000 and 5,000. It is all capital expenditure. The 18,000 is for the replacement of the failing water main, the storm drainage, service water and infrastructure for new fibre optic to be run from Taplins Road outside of the community centre. The £5,000 is for the company to install the fibre optics. The ongoing costs that the community centre will meet will obviously be the quarterly charges, water charges, the rental on the fibre optic and the equipment that's attached to that inside of the building. So that is the ongoing costs.
Right, thank you.
Hopefully that clears that up.
That does clear that up very well.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Ferguson.
I just have one specific question, Chair, for Mr. Kennedy. I note in 11.9 that there's an overspend on the cemeteries budget of £40,000. I just wondered if there was any way to mitigate that, or whether it was something that we always have a funding deficit for the cemeteries. It's something that we deal with each year. Thank you.
There have been a number of reviews of the fees and charges of cemeteries. It is obviously we aim to fully recover our costs wherever possible, but within cemeteries it does prove to be very challenging because obviously, as well as the new sites which receive additional income, we're also maintaining the whole of the cemetery itself. And so therefore, despite a number of reviews where fees and charges have been uplifted, and they'll obviously be subject to another review this year to determine whether any sort of uplift would be appropriate or not. But those reviews have benchmarked and consulted, and despite the increases, there still has always remained a net cost of the cemeteries. So it looks like cemeteries, there has always been a net cost from the cemeteries, and it looks likely that will continue despite reviews of the fee levels. I'm not sure they could sustainably be increased at a level which would fully recover costs.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry, Mr. Kennedy, and thank you, Chair. Just had an additional question. I know on the budget, and I do sit on the Town Accounts Informal Group, we currently put the vision delivery in the same line as the grant bidding process. I just wondered, given our previous discussion around the importance of delivering the vision, whether the vision warranted its own separate line in the accounts and should be taken away. We shouldn't conflate the grants and the vision, given how important we feel the vision is. It would also give clarity to the grants group to know exactly how much money is for grants, and that money won't be eroded or lessened because there's more needed for the vision. So I didn't really know, Ms. Kennedy, Darren, what you thought about that. Thank you.
Yes.
Before you answer, Mr. Kennedy, I know Councillor Radcliffe's going to be providing an update from the grants group later on as well, which I think will clarify some of the questions that you've asked. But sorry, Mr. Kennedy, you go ahead.
So yes, at the moment they are on one line, and I think that was obviously pending further work in terms of how the allocation would work and exactly how much budget the town forum deemed appropriate for vision work. So certainly as part of the budget options, I think we're looking to separate that onto separate lines and to get an understanding of how much budget the forum would like to allocate to grants, and also how much it would like to allocate to vision, whether the £33,000 is enough to cover both of those. I think those are all things that are being looked at the moment, and that we'll hope to be able to present an update to November Town Forum, and obviously split those lines as well to give further clarity, as you say, in terms of how much we're looking to spend on those two separate items.
Thank you. I think that will be incredibly helpful after we've had our briefing with the consultants as well, and we have a clear way forward with the vision. Do we have any further questions or debate? Councillor Verney.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's important to recognise that this paper very much represents the current position. We've already flagged up some of our concerns about the growth pressures arising from increased inflation, and increased costs. And I think those aren't just going to arise around general inflation and utilities, but also we're seeing significant inflation in terms of the cost of materials, the cost of labour, building and so on, which are undoubtedly going to increase costs of various projects that we have running at the moment. We do have a number of growth pressures. We've mentioned vision delivery, and I think it's really important that we do have some money for that, while recognising that we do want that to be very much community generated, which was the original reason for conflating that with the grants budget, because actually we saw those two items as being very much along the same line in terms of enabling the community to make improvements themselves. In terms of what we want to do, we've obviously got the King George V Pavilion and other improvements to the KGV playing fields. We've got the park plan that's coming forward, and I think what's really important with that park plan is that we don't just do a few spots and have some really nice bits and the rest of it's still all a bit run down, but that we really consider how well we're looking after the public realm that's the responsibility of the town forum, and just think about smartening things up a bit generally, really, and again that's likely to need greater funding. I think those were the principal issues I wanted to raise, but I think we do have to be aware that while the reserves are looking reasonably healthy at the moment, in order to achieve what we want to achieve, we'll have to eat into those and seriously consider what the town precept's going to be next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? No, then we'll move to the recommendations, which are that we note the financial projections in Appendix A and agree the budget timetable for 2022-23, and that we agree in principle to allocate the town's SIL funding of up to £23,000 for the Wick Community Centre. Are those agreed? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. North, for coming along tonight. Very helpful to have you here.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Appreciate it.
So now we move to the informal group updates. Mr. Todd, I see that you are here, so do you want to start off with the KGV update? Sorry, I should have said thank you, Mr. Kennedy, so much. I know you're always last for presenting at these meetings, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Further to our update on the KGV Pavilion project earlier this year, I'm pleased to report we have appointed Stride Architects following a competitive rotation process to develop a planning application for the new KGV Pavilion project. Stride are a local practice whom were involved in the new Winchester Sport and Leisure Centre. Winchester City Council and members have continued to liaise with user groups and funding contributors such as the FA and Sporting England. Whilst the planning application has been developed, their needs and requirements have been incorporated into the updated design. We have continued to develop the design as one two-storey pavilion offsets the centre of the boundary to provide views across all pitches, and to demolish the two existing pavilions which have reached the end of their economic life. I'd like to share with you the architect's latest proposed draft planning drawings.
Sorry, before you, will these be made available publicly? Just aware that people listening won't be able to.
Absolutely, and I was going to apologise. They're not that clear actually, so they will be available on the website as part of the meeting. The first drawing here shows the site plan. You'll see at the top of the site the two existing pavilions are to be demolished to the former first pavilion area on the left-hand side of the plan. Additional parking has been introduced as requested by the FA, along with a turning head Provision for EV charging will be included in consideration of the wider city needs. The second form of pavilion to the right of the plan will be used as a turning head and possible storage equipment. Second drawing shows the ground floor accommodation. This comprises of 6 sets of changing rooms, each including showers and the toilets, external plant room and a store, 2 officials changing rooms, an accessible shower and toilet room, cleaners cupboard, external male and female toilets, stair core including a lift to the upper floor. This is the first floor accommodation. This comprises of a storeroom, kitchen, servery, open space for activities and seating, cleaners cupboard, accessible toilet, male and female toilets, and an external viewing balcony. This plan is the elevations, showing the external finishes, which are to be of robust materials, including a combination of grey buff brickwork, fibre cement cladding, aluminium windows and doors. The scheme will include green cedar roof system, solar panels, brise soleil to the south facing glazing to provide some shading. Final slide shows the roadway to the rear of the building with the buffer zone. This plan also gives a better idea of the extent of the partially covered veranda. We are currently preparing 3D visuals, landscape design and a drainage strategy to support the planning application. We will be submitting a planning application week commencing the 4th of October. Subject to planning, we are anticipating works starting later next year with a likely completion late 2023. As the scheme develops, I'll keep you updated, but I welcome any comments and questions.
Thank you. Any comments? Any questions? No? Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry, Chair. I was waiting in case there was a question first. Thank you very much, Mr. Todd. It's great to see these plans really developing now, and the fact that you're taking on the community comments as you go forward. There was a question last time about whether or not the external toilets, accessible toilets, would be available to the public when the pavilion wasn't in use. And I didn't know whether we'd made any progress with answering that question. It was a question from the member of the public.
They're available if booking the pavilion, but they are externally accessible on their own. So should that decision be made in the future to open up to the public, there is that option.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Learning.
Yeah, I think it needs to be remembered though that there will be significant cost involved with opening up those toilets, particularly given the rather remote location. Having visited the KGB quite a lot during the day, it's often very quiet there, and I would have concerns about having toilets open on a regular unsupervised basis.
Noted. Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Weir.
Well, I just wanted to thank Mr. Todd and his team for the work that they've put in on this. I think it's come a long way forward. I think we've got a very good proposal now. I'm grateful to Stride Craig Loud for the work that they've put in as well. And I think it will be a really great complement to the leisure centre. And I think it gives us confidence that the concept of an overall park plan is starting to come together for KGB. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Todd. Really, really pleased to see those plans and see that there is concrete steps being taken towards delivery of this pavilion. So thank you, and thank you to your team for all the work they've done on this as well. In terms of the other groups, we've already heard from we've had the paper on the accounts, so I don't know if anyone wants to update on the accounts group. So the next one I have on my list is grants. Councillor Radcliffe, did you want to update us on what the grants group's been up to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a brief update to confirm to members that the informal grants group has met and taken several decisions. The small grant scheme for local voluntary and community groups remains open for applications for small grants up to £500. We've also ramped up our crowdfunding scheme, increasing the upper limit on the amount of funding that the council will match from £2,000 to £4,000, which means in effect that if a group raises £4,000 through crowdfunding, the council will then pitch in with £4,000 in matched funding, bringing the total up to £8,000. There's more information both on the small grant scheme and on our matched crowdfunding scheme on the council website, which has now been updated at winchester.gov.uk/grants. Anyone interested in receiving some training on crowdfunding can join an online training event that's taking place on September the 28th at 4 p.m. And they can sign up on the website using the same address I just gave. Finally, we'd welcome help from councillors both in publicising these schemes and also just in encouraging applications from specific groups in their own wards that they think might qualify for funding. Also, the grants team is going to be organising a drop-in event in early October for councillors who are interested in learning more about the programme. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. I'm sure there'll be lots of interest in that. Do we have any questions for Councillor Radcliffe? No? No. And we've got the paper coming to the next meeting, I think, from the grants team as well, don't we? Yep. Next on my list is the City Centre Group. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, this is the artist previously known as High Street Group. We felt that it would be helpful if the remit of the group were expanded to include what we might call the commercial heart of the city, an area not precisely defined but broadly stretching the station to the Arthur statue, from Colbert Street to the square up to somewhere between Farragate and North Walls. The intention is to assist the town forum's engagement with major initiatives happening in and around the city centre, the movement strategy, its many potential implications, and of course the central Winchester redevelopment. We recognised, I think, that the last 18 months have left some of the city centre looking a bit dowdy, and comments, for example, the review for perceptions from BID have been very helpful in drawing attention to some of those problems. Large and long-term projects may have some opportunities for addressing some of these piecemeal requirements, and of course also still we've been talking about partnership funding. And we thought that to respond quickly to opportunities as they come along, it would be helpful if, for the city centre, we developed a sort of schedule, desirable small projects, small improvement projects, with indicative costings, so that we could jump when opportunities arose. And Councillor Radcliffe and I are meeting with officers early next month to take that forward and back, of course, to the town floor. I think we're especially disappointed that St Maurice's covert work is still in progress, although we entirely understand the reasons why, including the failure of Debenhams and the problems that's provided getting access to the building. And these delays have been beyond the council's control. But I have in mind here the comments that Mr Tate made earlier and indeed in the paper last week. Just to say that the new ceiling and lighting will be underway very soon. We understand, and my view is that the work that has been completed at the cathedral end of St Maurice's covert, the groundwork there, the seating, and the spectacular display of the gravestones from the monetary and frame, as I call it, is really exceptional. I think we should be looking for the kind of standard across the rest of the High Street area. The lighting of the Frink Horse with bid funds is still pending agreement from Hampshire City Council. And indeed, that's the Surrey Hampshire County Council. And on lighting more generally, there's much more work to be done. That's my report.
Lovely, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Edwards? Oh, Councillor Green, sorry.
Can I ask when the last time the group met?
The last time the city centre group met was in July, 28th of July.
Okay, I thought I was on that group, but I don't have any recollection of being invited to anything some time now.
Yeah, I think there seems to have been a misunderstanding, Councillor Green, and perhaps we could take that outside this meeting, and I assure you that no discourtesy was intended if you didn't receive the papers for the meeting.
Thank you. We will confirm. I recall you were a member of that group as well. Councillor Green. The next group I have to update is planning. I think Mr. Finch is also on the line to update on planning, and Councillor Trask. I'm not sure which of you would like to speak. Mr. Finch, thank you for being here.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving the opportunity to speak. Hopefully you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
You never know when I'm 25 miles away. Yeah, so basically we are in the process of finalising arrangements for a key stage in the local plan, which comes off the back of discussions that we've been having with that planning group, which I think you were part of, and Councillor Trask, in terms of particularly developing a way forward in terms of design. And doing things perhaps somewhat differently to the way we deal with design issues currently under the current local plan, and linking that into the new local plan, which we are bringing forward with a consultation draft, which is due sort of late summer, early autumn next year. So as part of doing that and dealing with some of the issues that the planning group highlighted, which also link back into some of the work that was referenced earlier with the vision. So that's a connection there as well, and we're just finalising the arrangements for those 3 workshops. The first one, as you know, will be around effectively an assessment and audit, if you like, of how the policies currently work or don't work. You know, what's good, what's not, what works, what doesn't work, and how we might improve it. And then taking that forward into 2 separate workshops, one for Winchester Town, because obviously it's the most significant settlement we've got in the local plan area by far, and then a separate session which will deal with the same issues in terms of how we develop policies going forward for the rural area market towns. So and I'm also delighted to say that we've got Design South East that are helping us with that piece of work. And they are ideally qualified to help us facilitate, as we've also got a key speaker who was a previous very senior government advisor, that we're just finalising that arrangement as well. And we envisage that the workshops will be in a venue in Winchester, which we'll be confirming very shortly. And then we will go out into outside the town for the second or third workshop that deals with the issues in the market towns and the rural area. So hopefully that's just an overview there, but quite exciting. Hopefully that we can review, look at what works, what doesn't work from a design point of view, taking that forward then into the formal local plan process for the town, and obviously for the wider district, rural market towns and rural parts of the district outside the national park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Finch? Councillor Trask.
Sorry, Chair, it's not a question, it's more about.
Can we keep it brief?
I think just to thank you, Simon, for your work, you and Adrian, as you say, very exciting. I think it is an extraordinary opportunity for Winchester residents to get involved, and there are a couple of opportunities for people to get involved. I think the first one you mentioned is very much about looking at the local plan and the policies that we have, and whether they do or don't work, or which policies are missing. So it's a fantastic opportunity to get people involved. I think we have, I speak for you, Chair, as well, in terms of the planning group, we have been speaking with people who have expertise in policy. But I want to open up the opportunity for nominations of people, if you agree, Chair, who other councillors feel have expertise in policy writing. We'd be very keen to speak to them and to get their thoughts about what policies are in the local plan right now, and almost to interview them to see if they could take a more constructive and meaningful contribution going forward. So it's an opportunity for fellow councillors to let us know if they know some people.
And I would echo that if anyone does know anyone, please let Councillor Craskell, Mr Finch know, because we again want to encourage as wide a group of people as possible to be engaged in the local plan process for the town, so we make sure we have a local plan that works for everyone in the town. Thank you, Ms. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, I just had a question for you. We talk about Winchester Town, and obviously we sit in the town forum here, but Oliver's Battery, Badger Farm are currently not within the town forum, but for many people they would see that as part of the town. I just wondered, you know, to what extent we will pick up those areas that kind of fall out of the town forum, but for the most part feel like they're part of the town. Obviously for Littleton and Hairstock, we have councillors here who straddle both the town forum and the parish, but we don't have those ones from Oliver's Battery and Badger Farm, and not to increase the scope, but if you look at the town, people say it's part of the town. Thank you.
Yes, and when we were drawing the line for the vision work, we specifically included those areas for that reason, to cover that. So Mr Finch, I don't know if you want to touch on whether or not it would be appropriate to can't speak tonight, extend the boundary for the town for the purposes of looking at planning as well, if that would be appropriate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what I should have said, actually, I didn't say, was the first of the workshops is a targeted workshop, it's an invitation workshop, because what, as Councillor Krask actually mentioned there, what we're looking for the first one are people that have direct experience of using policy. So it could be, we've got, as you know, almost an embarrassment of riches of professionals that live and work in and around Winchester in this industry, in terms of design architects and things. So that will be targeted, but it will have member representation from the town forum, but also more widely as well, and there'll be member representation around that. What I would say is, excuse me, is of course that the local plan, which this is part of that sort of building of an evidence base, if you like, to leading towards that consultation, which we're moving towards next year on a draft local plan, is obviously all of the district outside of the town wards. So that, you know, all the engagement that we've done to date, which, as you know, we had a very, very good response back on the strategic issues and priorities, which was the town and all the rest of the district. But we can give some consideration, and I'm quite happy to talk to members of the planning group about if they're interested in that slightly wider reach. But as I say, what we are going to do is we're doing the sort of what works, what doesn't work, and then we're looking to roll that out for the town and for the market towns and rural districts. So hopefully between it, we can cover all of those areas off, basically, so it's not just a town thing, of course, but it was really that's kind of where the sort of spark came from, with the enthusiasm and the drive expressed from the forum, and now we're actually following that approach for the wider district as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr Finch while he's here? No. So thank you, Mr Finch, very helpful as always. Sorry for keeping you up.
It was all interesting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next group I have on my list is the North Wales group, and I don't know if we need an update given the presentation we've had this evening. Councillor Ferguson is shaking her head at me. So the last group, if I'm not mistaken, is the Heritage group. So Councillor Tippett Cooper.
Slightly got the graveyard shift here, but thankfully this is the most exciting group, so it's going to be the one where I'm going to keep you all on the edge of your seats as I talk you through it. But yes, the newly minted Heritage Group we first had our first meeting, discussed our terms of reference, and the terms of reference of the group is that we are going to be sort of an advisory group for the town forum with the task of enhancing and maintaining the council's heritage assets in the town area. Addressing issues with assets owned by others, looking at opportunities for external funding that can be tapped into for heritage works improvements, and engaging with external stakeholders like the excellent heritage groups that we have in the town. The first meeting, we noticed some positive news, recent positive news on heritage matters, including the excellent collaborative effort that existed between council teams and community groups like High 900 in the preservation of historic fabric following the collapsed wall on Nunn Stream, and that was a really good example of a good ongoing dialogue between the council and those community groups in a difficult situation, and we'll be looking to move forward in restoring that site as soon as possible. And also the restoration of Hyde Abbey garden benches that were subject to vandalism, and those have been restored as a combination of, again, community fundraising efforts and a contribution from the council. So again, a really good positive news story on heritage matters. And the final one is the Hyde Abbey Gateway, and now it's good to report that there's been some progress made. All the consents are now in place for a contractor to be appointed, and the contractor has been appointed to start the pigeon proofing installation for that, subject to their method statement being approved by the Secretary of State. So Hyde Abbey Gateway will be pigeon proofed soon, and the tyranny of pigeons will be addressed at last there. And hopefully that's sort of maybe a model for other sites where we've got pigeon problems, and Mr. Tate mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. Looking forward for the group plans, we'll be looking at, again, tying this very neatly in with other parts of the meeting, looking for small wins on the heritage front, and where we can look for sort of enhancements and improvements in our heritage sites, which are easy in scale to achieve. But then also looking at some bigger projects, and we were sort of provided with a number of surveys from key heritage assets in the city, including the Buttercross, which has been mentioned, and the repairs of that, the King's Gateway and repairs of that, Sid Morris Tower and Westgate, both repair surveys have been done for those sites. We need to look at those in more detail. The possibility of an accessible toilet in Abbey House, and in addition to the pigeon proofing of Hyde Abbey Gateway, repairs for that, which would include things like roof repairs, stonework repairs, the external elevations, repairs and redecoration to the rainwater goods, basically includes the guttering. But with all of that, the key thing is assessing the cost of it, and the next stage will be finding cost consultants to give us costings for what that's going to cost. And that will inform the council's asset management plan, which we worked on the basis of what's the sort of priority to be addressed in terms of condition and then risk to the public and risk to the property itself. It's probably worth mentioning that it's unlikely that we're going to be able to get any grants or central government funding for these assets, because none of our assets appears to be at risk. I'm not quite sure what the definition of this, but I can find out if anyone wants to know. But that's it. It's all very positive, looking very good, and yes, hopefully we can really do a lot of work in the group to enhance and improve our city's heritage.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Tippett Cooper? No, then unless my list is incorrect, I think we've covered all of the informal groups, so we move to the final item for tonight, which is to agree the work programme for 2021-2022. which is found from page 35. So we've got the next meeting is scheduled to be the 10th of November. We've got papers due to come forward on the town forum grants. Again, the town account medium-term financial position. To be confirmed, a paper on the cemetery and a presentation on the future 50. And then for our January meeting, big paper will be the town account budget for, that says 2020, 2021. I think it means 2021, 2022. Correct? Yeah. Actually, I think the 2022, 2023.
22-23.
Yes. Few years out of date there. Is that agreed? Lovely. And that concludes tonight's business. Thank you, everyone. And we're done by 8:30, which I think is very good going. So thank you. Thank you all. And thank you to the members of the public for attending tonight as well. And of course, thank you to the officers for giving up your evening again. We really do appreciate it. Thank you all.